right? So the question we have, there's a frictionless horizontal surface, and on that surface rests a ring of radius r and mass m. With the plane of the ring is horizontal, and a small particle of mass m is placed in contact with the inner surface of the ring. Okay, so a small like a particle of mass m is placed in contact with the inner surface of the ring. The small particle is given a velocity u along the tangent to the ring at the location of the particle. So we have to find magnitude of contact force between them during the subsequent.
Sir,
Yes.
I'm getting contact force as mu square by 18 R, sir.
Mu square by
18 R.
18 R.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it mu square by 18 R? Have you considered that masses of
Yes,
the
sir.
ring and particle are different here?
No, sir. Wait. I took both of them equal. I'll do it
One of
again.
them is capital M, another one is small m.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I didn't see it.
So the question that was just given was this ring was there. Ring's mass is given, and a small particle is there inside the ring, whose mass is small. So this ring and particle system is in horizontal plane. It's placed on a horizontal frictionless surface. Okay, so the whole system can move in horizontal plane. Initially, this particle is given a velocity tangentially. It is given a velocity tangentially, v naught or u, I think, whatever. It's given some velocity. Okay, so the question is to find what will be the contact force between them during subsequent motion. Okay, now since this small particle is in contact with the inner surface of the ring. Okay, so here we can say that as it moves, as it stays in contact with this inner surface of the ring, there will be some contact force between them. And if there is an observer who is positioning himself fixed with the center of the ring always, then he will find this particle to be moving in a circular path with respect to him, with the radius r. Okay. Another thing which is also to be observed here is that initially particle is given a velocity v naught, but ring is not given any velocity. So which means that the center of mass of this combined system will be somewhere here. This will be center of mass. So if this is O, this is a particle, then this is the center of mass. Okay, this distance is r. So you can find the position of center of mass also actually here. Distance of center of mass from the particle and from O. So this distance will come out to be OC will be the mass of the ring can be said to be concentrated here, and the particle is over here. So center of mass will divide the two masses in the ratio, inverse ratio of their masses. So according to that, OC should come out to be equal to small m into r by l. Okay. Not only that, we can also find velocity of center of mass also, because velocity of particle we know and velocity of ring is 0 initially. So velocity of center of mass should be mv naught by m. That is velocity of center of mass. Now here, even though there is a contact force between the two bodies, that contact force must be internal force for the system. Right? So therefore, we can say that the center of mass will not be accelerated. Center of mass of system should move with a constant velocity. Suppose center of mass has a velocity, it would move with a constant velocity. The particle's velocity may change. The ring's velocity also may change, but center of mass velocity should remain constant because there are no external forces, and it should move with this constant velocity. Okay, since the distance between the particle and the center of the ring, that remains r only. Okay, so therefore we can say that this whole setup can be considered to be a case where center of mass is moving with a constant velocity vc, and then the system of ring and particle, are moving in circular paths about the center of mass. Okay, so both of them can be considered to be moving around the center of mass in a circular path with the different radius. So we can say that the center of the ring is moving around the center of mass with this radius OC, and this particle is moving around the center of mass with this radius of CP. This radius of CP. So they are moving around the center of mass with different radius, but same angular speeds with respect to center of mass. So in a way, you can say that this system is something similar to like a system of binary star system, right? Where you have two stars which are moving with their common center of mass with circular paths with the same angular speeds. Okay, because the only force which governs the motion of binary star is their gravitation, mutual gravitation force of attraction. And here the only contact force is the only force that is acting between these two bodies, which are equal and opposite. Okay, so what we can then do is, since particle is undergoing circular motion with respect to center of mass, so if you see in center of mass reference here, center of mass frame. Now, what kind of frame is center of mass frame? Is it an inertial frame or a non-inertial frame? Non-inertial. Okay. The center of mass frame will be an inertial frame here. It will not be a non-inertial frame because the center of mass is moving with constant velocity. Right? So center of mass frame is basically inertial frame here. And since we are taking center of mass as inertial frame, so whenever you write any force equations for the ring or for the particle in the center of mass frame, you don't have to consider any pseudo forces. Okay. Now, since this particle is undergoing circular motion with respect to the center of mass, and this is the radius. This is the radius of the circular motion. So then we can say that normal force acting on the particle. Normal force is the only force acting on the particle. No pseudo force. So this normal force should be equal to m into v relative square by c. M into v relative square by cp. Now, what is v relative? V relative is velocity of this particle with respect to center of mass. Okay, so I can take velocity of particle with respect to center of mass. So velocity of particle with respect to center of mass will be velocity of particle minus velocity, which will be equal to v naught minus velocity of center of mass. We have calculated it. It is m v naught by m.
We are calculating only at initial conditions, sir.
Yes.
Are we finding the contact force only at initial condition, or
No, in general, in general.
Then VP need not be in the same direction as VC. No, sir. We need to take two components. No, sir, in that case.
No, VC will be constant. VC will be constant.
VP, sir. VP might be at an angle also. No, sir.
No, but VP will be always perpendicular to C.
Yes, sir. But
because if you say that above center of mass, both O and P are undergoing circular motion. So that means velocity of P with respect to center of mass will be perpendicular to center of mass, will be perpendicular to C. Okay, because you saying like in the reference frame of center of mass, you can say that like velocity of this P with respect to center of mass should be directed perpendicular to line joining center of mass.
So, but VC need not be perpendicular to CP, right?
Yeah,
yes,
but
sir. VC need not be perpendicular.
VC
need not be perpendicular to CP, right?
VC need not be perpendicular to CP. No, VC need not be perpendicular. No, VC is not important also here. See, the thing is, okay, at any general instant of time, we can't calculate velocity of P with respect to C this way. Right? Agree.
Yes, sir.
But
yes, sir.
At the initial instant of time, we can calculate this, and this is going to remain same in magnitude.
So we can say the contact force also remains constant, and it's equal.
Yes, it should remain constant in magnitude, because what we can say is that this is the force that is acting initial, or we can say this is the relative speed with which the particle is moving in center of mass, like the reference frame. So it's, imagine a situation. Suppose you take a ring like this. You just take a ring like this, and you give a particle a velocity v naught, right? You don't move the ring. You keep the ring fixed. Keep the ring fixed. So therefore, the ring is an inertial reference frame only, right? Now you give this particle a velocity v naught, and there is no gravity also. It's a gravity-free space. Now, do you think that normal force will remain constant in this case?
Yes.
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 Right? So if normal force would remain constant in this case, why it would not remain constant in this case?
Yes, indeed.
Right?
It should.
So that
Yes.
analogy we can use here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Because center of mass is anyway acting as an inertial reference frame. So in that reference frame, like we are able to say that the relative speeds of O and P would remain same in magnitude, although directions are going to change, no doubt. Right? So I'm just finding what is the magnitude of relative speed by doing this. So V naught minus, so this is going to be capital M into V naught by M. So this is V relative magnitude. V relative of P with respect to center. Okay, so this we are getting. So once we get this, we can use this in the force equation, mv relative square by Cp. So therefore, we can say normal force will be equal to m into v relative square is mv naught by m plus m whole square. By Cp will be this distance. Now Cp will come out to be equal to OP minus OC. Cp can be considered OP minus OC means we have to do R minus OC. R minus OC. So R minus OC will come out to be equal to capital MR by M plus. It will come out to be capital MR. Capital MR. So that we can put in this expression. So it will be. So therefore, normal force is coming out to be, or contact force is coming out to be equal to M plus M will get cancelled and capital M also will get cancelled. And so you will get M into capital M by into V naught square by R by M plus 1 M plus M. So this is the expression we are getting for the contact force between the particle and Rohit. What is it out?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, so the velocity of center of mass will be in the same direction for throughout the motion, no, sir?
Velocity of center of mass will be constant. Yes, same direction.
So even velocity of P should also be in upward direction, sir, and like throughout.
No, velocity of P with respect to ground will not be in upward direction.
Okay.
Velocity of P with respect to ground will not be in upward direction. That is going to change. Okay. Because normal force direction also will continuously change. No? So velocity of P in upward direction in ground reference frame will not be in upward direction. And not even velocity of P with respect to center of mass also its direction will change. Velocity of P with respect to center of mass it will always be perpendicular to this line. See.
Oh, okay, okay, sir. Okay.
It will always be perpendicular to this line. So velocity of P in the ground reference frame also will change.
But that velocity perpendicular will remain constant, like at all instants.
Magnitude will remain constant. Yes. Magnitude of velocity.
Direction.
Yeah, magnitude of velocity of P with respect to center of mass will remain constant.
Okay.
But the magnitude of velocity of center of the ring also with respect to center of mass, that also will remain constant.
Okay.
Okay. So both of them will move with the same speeds in circular motion with constant with the equal angular speeds. Both will have equal angular speeds because the center of mass you can say that in center of mass reference frame, center of mass should be at rest. In center of mass reference frame, center of mass cannot be moving. Okay? So that means in center of mass reference frame, we can say that both this O and P, they should be having equal angular speeds. Okay. With although the distances are same, distances from center of masses are different for both O and P, but their angular speeds about center of mass should be same.
Sir, this is reduced mass only, sir.
Yes, sir, yeah, it's actually coming out to be same as reduced mass, but I never use the term reduced mass here because anyway, when we use the fundamental concepts and we finally do it, we end up with such a result. But yes, of course, it turns out to be so.
We can directly take that, no, sir. We can take reduced mass, undergo circular motion about.
We should actually know when we can take reduced mass and when we should not take reduced mass, and we should not use a concept unnecessarily when it's not required. Whenever you have internal forces which are responsible for motion or which are governing the motion between two bodies, then you can bring in reduced mass concept. You can use this concept even in this situation where suppose if two bodies are moving like a binary star system, if you consider in such a situation also, when you want to determine kinetic energy of whole system or when you want to define what is angular momentum of the whole system about their common center of mass, then this reduced mass concept will expression of reduced mass will come in the expression. If you are taking, say, angular momentum of a system of two particles which are moving about their common center of mass due to mutual forces of gravity. Okay. Then if the distance between the two particles is r, right? Then in that case, the kinetic energy of the system, you can just consider it as half into reduced mass into square of the relative speeds. There will be some relative speeds between the two masses, right? V relative. So then the kinetic energy of system, if you calculate by using the fundamental concepts, you will finally get half into m1 m2 by m1 plus m2 into V relative square. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this is a next question. And so what we have here is there are two prisms A and B of masses MA and MB, and they are placed on a frictionless horizontal surface. Okay, touching each other. They just touch each other at the bottom edges. Okay, the slant faces of the prisms are frictionless, and they are inclined at angles alpha and beta with the horizontal. Okay, and a horizontal cylinder of mass m is placed on the prisms, and the cylinder makes contact with both the prisms. Okay, and it is just released. Okay, the cylinder is just released from rest. So the base of the cylinder is vertical, as you can see in the diagram. Okay, so as the cylinder moves down, it pushes both the prisms apart. The prisms are going to move apart. Right? So we have to find the ratio of speeds of prism A to that of prism B. Okay, before the cylinder reaches the floor. Like if you don't like the expressions that you get for your answers, then you can take some values for alpha and beta. I think you can take alpha as 37 and beta as 53 degrees. Otherwise, you can determine in terms of alpha and beta, it's better.
Sir, the sphere is only moving down, sir.
It's not a sphere, it's a cylinder.
Sir, cylinder, sir.
Yeah. What you were asking? Cylinder is moving?
Sir, it can move in horizontal direction also, na, sir.
It's moving down, but it can move in horizontal also.
Okay, sir.
It's free to move, like however it is constrained to move.
Okay.
but you can assume that it maintains contact with both the prisms.
Okay.
Sir, method wise, it is like,
Okay.
yeah. Sir, if we say y direction is downward direction, sir, and x is towards right, sir.
Okay.
Then we can write force equations. We can find normal forces on A and B by using constraints and like center of mass should not move.
Okay.
Then since normal forces are will come out to be proportional to some alpha, like those angles only.
Okay.
Then we can say that ratio only should be the ratio at which A and B moves.
Okay.
Yes.
But how you can say normal force only? What ratio for normal force you will get? That only will be the ratio for velocities of. Okay. But normal force component will be driving
Yes,
the
sir. Yes.
prism.
Like the ratio of normal force components.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That we can say. Yes. Because like they start moving from rest only, no?
Yes, sir.
So you can say.
And we'll also have to use the.
How are you finding normal force between like prism and the sphere?
Yes, sir. Like there are. I'll just check once, sir, if there are more variables or not.
Okay.
Sir, radius of the cylinder is not given, sir.
Radius of cylinder is not given. I don't think it is required.
We won't require it, sir. Sir, we can use two constraints and two force equations, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
That much should be enough, sir, to eliminate all of the given variables.
What are the two force equations you are using?
Sir, one in horizontal direction, one in vertical direction, sir.
For the prism.
For the spheres. For the
For
spheres.
cylinder. For cylinder.
Cylinder, yes, sir.
Okay.
Then and two constant equations for both the wedges.
Okay.
Prisms, yes.
How many unknowns you have? You have like accelerations of the prisms, and then you have acceleration of the cylinder, and
Yes,
the
sir.
normal forces. There are
Normal
5
forces.
unknowns.
6 actually.
Two normal forces and acceleration, two components of acceleration of the cylinder. Acceleration of cylinder will have two components, and then two accelerations of prism. So 6
Prism.
unknowns are there.
Yes, sir.
So you have two equations, one equation in horizontal, one equation in vertical, and two constraint equations.
Yes, sir. Actually, even two more because we took two more variables, sir. That those two normal forces we can say we can relate to accelerations of A and B.
Okay.
Yes. So 6 equations, 6 variables. This is one possible method, but lengthy only.
Okay. Yes.
If we consider alpha as 37, beta is 53, sir, that will be simple, sir, like compared to other cases.
Yeah. As
Yes,
I
sir,
told
that
earlier,
would be more
as
easier
I told
case.
Because,
earlier, if you take alpha and beta and you can, if possible, try to get it in terms of alpha and beta. Otherwise, you can substitute alpha beta as 37 and 53 and see. Even also, you will not get a very small expression.
angle between
Because
strands,
MA, MB and M3, like 3 terms are there.
and angle between the stand surfaces will be 90 degrees in
Yeah.
that case.
Yeah.
So we can directly resolve the sphere into two directions, which is perpendicular to both the stand surfaces.
Okay.
Then, if we consider the accelerations of A and B are A and AB, sir,
Okay.
then it will be like when we are observing with respect to B, the sphere should be like it is rolling on process. It should have only acceleration parallel to the slash surface
Sphere
of
will
B.
only be like, it will have two accelerations, downward acceleration and horizontal acceleration.
No, if you resolve it like both acceleration components resolve perpendicular to the planes, sir, like they are also right angle, no, sir.
Yeah. You can say that acceleration of a sphere, relative motion along the normal will not be there.
Yes, sir. Using that, we'll get both of the expressions in terms of AB and A.
Okay.
Then, if you use again NA and NB as contact forces between the normal forces,
Okay.
then we'll get AB and A, NA and NB also in terms of AB and A.
Okay.
Then again we can equate accelerations in we can resolve those two accelerations which you got in terms of horizontal and vertical direction.
Yeah, but if you can get a ratio of accelerations, I think that will give you ratio of velocity also.
Yes, sir. Based on horizontal acceleration, we only get those ratios also, sir.
Yeah.
That NA minus NB equals to M into acceleration of sphere in horizontal direction. NA and NB components in horizontal direction.
Okay.
And we know NA and NB also in terms of acceleration AB and AB also.
Okay.
Based on that, if we solve, we are getting, sir. But still, that is also lengthy only. Even if we consider that.
But the thing is, sin alpha and alpha and beta terms will not be there. If you take 37 and 53.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Rohit, what is it out? You have raised your hand.
Sir, we can't find A and AB separately, no, sir. Like, we can only get a relation between the two, no, sir.
No, you can find A and AB separately if you write force equations.
Sir, I got 6 equations, sir. Like, one is for the cylinder.
Huh.
I wrote 2 equations.
For cylinder, you have to write 2 equations.
Yes, sir. Cylinder, I got 2 equations.
Yeah.
And then I got 2 equations for both the wedges horizontal accelerations.
You write 2 equations. You'll get 2 force equations for prisms and 2 force equations for cylinder. So total that will be 4 equations.
And 2 constraint equations for accelerations.
Yes. So 6 equations will come.
Sir, but we don't know 2 normal forces. We don't know.
Yeah, but 6 unknowns you have, no? What are the 6 unknowns? See,
we
6
can have one
unknowns
more
are
equation, sir.
acceleration of A, acceleration of B, then we have acceleration of sphere. There are 2 components. Acceleration of cylinder, 2 components are there. So
Yes.
4 of the unknowns are basically acceleration components.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
And then 2 unknowns are normal force, NA and NB.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
So
we
6
can have one
unknowns
more
are-
equation,
Oh,
sir.
no, no,
Simpler equation. That
Yeah.
acceleration of center of mass in horizontal direction is 0.
Yeah, yes, you can use that also. Yes. Acceleration of center of mass in horizontal direction is 0 also we can use. So that may help you in simplifying the things.
Sir, but that is not a big equation, sir, because that is a dependent one only, sir. When we have written first equations on sphere
Yeah,
and
but I'm
horizontal
telling you, we
direction,
can use this equation instead of the other.
Use concept of center of mass, you may have to reduce one of the other equations.
Sir, but we don't know mass of cylinder, no, sir. That becomes another variable, no, sir.
They gave M.
Mass of cylinder is given.
Oh, given, okay. Sorry.
Given. Mass of cylinder is given to be small m.
Okay, okay, sir. Then fine, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I don't think we need to solve all the 6 equations, sir. Just like we just need to find the ratio of accelerations, sir.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we can.
actually, the thing is like he was actually asking how he went about solving the questions, how he went about writing force equations and all that, and how many equations he got. That's what I was telling him. Actually, for solving this problem, we don't have to write 6 equations. What you're saying is right. For actually
Yes,
solving
sir.
this problem, you don't need that many equations. I think 3 equations maybe.
Yes, sir. Like we can find relation between AX and AY. Like
Yeah.
AX and AY are the components of cylinders. And then if we use constant equations, we'll get a relation between AB and AX AY and AA acceleration of A and AX and AY, sir.
Yeah.
So like if we just assume that normal force due to B is greater than normal force due to A,
Okay.
then like we'll get one answer, sir. I think we're getting, I mean, I got M cot beta minus MA into cot alpha plus cot beta by M cot alpha minus MB into cot alpha plus cot beta as the ratio of.
Okay. So you got the expression in terms of alpha and beta. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay, like in that case, we'll just write down the diagram and see like what is given like this. So here we have the sphere. Okay, so cylinder. So there is a contact force MA here and MB here, and MG will act down. Okay. Anyway, before looking at forces and all that, we don't actually probably need to write force equations also in this case. Like what we can just do is that like we'll first find constraint equations. You'll get 2 constraint equations. Now the sphere will have one velocity downwards like this. I'll take that as Vy, and we'll have one velocity in the x direction, which will be this way. Yes. Okay. So Vx and Vy. I'm taking one leftwards and one downwards. Velocity components for the sphere. Okay. And velocity of A will be Va, and for B it is. Okay, so the constant relation is that since contact is maintained between the cylinder and prism, so we can therefore say that velocity of prism A along the normal and velocity of this cylinder along the normal should be equal. Okay, you can take a component of velocity of cylinder along normal and component of prism's velocity along normal, both must be equal. Okay, now to find the cylinder's velocity along normal, what we should do is we have to resolve Vx and Vy along the normal, along this normal, along the normal to this prism. Okay, so we have to resolve Vy along this normal and Vx along this normal also, which will come out to be nothing but Vx is sine alpha, right, and Vy cos alpha, right. So Vy cos alpha plus Vx is sine alpha. So Vy cos alpha plus Vx sin alpha, that must be equal to normal component of velocity of Va. So Va's normal component will be Va sin alpha. Okay, so Va sin alpha. So I can equate this to Va sin. So this is one equation. The other equation I'll form is like that the normal velocity of normal component of velocity of B should be equal to normal component of velocity of this cylinder. Okay, so to find the normal component of velocity of cylinder, to find the cylinder's velocity along this normal, I should take Vy's component along normal and I should take Vx component along the normal and then take difference of, because Vy's component is directed this way normal, it is directed this way, and Vx component is directed the other way. So difference of both will give you net component of cylinder's velocity along the normal. So that should be Vy cos beta minus Vx sin beta. That should be equal to component of Vb along normal. Component of Vb along normal should be Vb sin beta. Okay, so this is the other equation. So 2 equations we have got here with Vy, Vx, Va and Vb. 4 unknowns are there, Va, Vb, Vy and Vx. Okay, now one more equation we can form with which we can use the fact that the center of mass of the whole system should have zero acceleration in the horizontal direction. In the horizontal direction, there is no acceleration for the center of mass of the system. So therefore, we can say that momentum of this system also along the horizontal we can consider. We can say total momentum of system along horizontal should be zero. Okay. So that way, if you do, then you will get. If I take say leftward as positive, okay, then I will get MA into VA plus M into Vx should be equal to MB into.
We can eliminate Vx.
Yeah, so this is a relation we get. So we have to eliminate basically Vx and Vy. Okay, Vx and Vy have to be eliminated from these two equations, and then we have to get relation in only Va and V. Okay, so we can eliminate Vx right away from this equation itself. We can write Vx as it is MdVB minus MaVa, right? That is Vx. Then this we can substitute in place of Vx in the second equation. Okay, so then we will get Vy from there. Okay, so we can substitute like Vx in this like equation. Okay, so then you will get Vy cos beta. Substituting this in the second equation, Vy cos beta minus Vx is MdVb minus Ma Va by M into sin beta is equal to Vb sin.
Sir, we can divide the whole equation by sin beta, sir.
Divide the whole equation by
Sin beta. Like we'll only have
yes,
cos.
yeah, if you divide this whole equation by sin beta, you'll only have cot beta. Yes. That's
Or we
right.
can divide by cos beta so that okay, yes, this way.
Yeah, then we get tan beta. Tan beta 2 tan beta terms will come. Okay. So this is expression. So we get Vy from this. So this Vy we can substitute in the first. Okay. So here what we get Vy is equal to Vb sin beta plus MdVb minus MaVa by M into sin beta. And by cos beta. So that means wherever you have sin beta, you get tan beta. Okay, so Vy comes out. Right? So this Vy you can substitute in the first equation, that is Vy cos alpha plus Vx sin alpha equal to Va sin alpha. So that equation we get. So then you're going to get so substituting this will get Vb tan beta is basically common here. So it is tan beta into Vb plus MdVb minus MaVa by M. Okay. This is what we have Vy into cos alpha plus Vx sin alpha. But we already got Vx as MdVb minus MaVa by M. So MdVb minus MaVa by M. This into sin alpha. That should be equal to Va sin. So those are the equations we get finally, which is only involving Va and Vb. Okay, and then this equation we have to use to find ratio of Va and Vb. That is Va by Vb we can find. We can divide this whole equation by Vb. So if you divide this whole equation by Vb, you will get Va by Vb ratio. Because whenever you divide by Vb, this Vb by Vb will become 1. And here also we get Va by Vb equal to 1. And this will become Va by Vb. This is also Va by Vb. And here we get Va. So you will get Va by Vb in terms of alpha and beta. So like here we did not use any force equations actually because the question was to find only ratio of velocities, and so if you are asked to find what is the velocity of A or what is the velocity of B by the time cylinder has reached the ground, then that would have been a different thing altogether. Or if you are asked to find say acceleration of both the prisms and also of the cylinder at any general time, then also like you have no other option but to use force equations.
We can use energy conservation.
Yes, you can use energy conservation. If you want to find velocities, suppose you want to find what is VA, what is VB, and what is V, what is Vx and Vy. Individually values you want to find by the time cylinder has reached the ground. Then you can use energy conservation. Okay, but then the problem in that is that you should know what is the position of center of the cylinder initially. That's not given in this question. So if I tell you what is the position of center of cylinder, how high the center of cylinder is from the ground initially. Okay, if that is given, or how high the bottom of the cylinder is from the ground initially. If that is given, then we can use energy.
That we can find. That we can find, sir, because it is however balanced initially.
If it is however,
we are having already alpha beta value. We know alpha beta,
yeah,
and
in this case we can find because like
we should know radius of cylinder, so that's it.
Yes, sir, we at least have to know radius of cylinder.
No, since the prism is given to be like this, so here we can say it is maintaining contact with both.
Yes.
So since these angles alpha and beta are also given, so by using geometry we can find out this height also. Of course, radius should be known to us.
Yes.
Right? That we can do.
Sir, but without radius also we are able to get it, no, sir?
Without radius you are able to get.
Through force
Okay,
equations.
how we are able to this height? How you find?
No, sir. By force equations we can find,
yes,
sir.
force equations you can find. See, but the question was, like to answer that question, to find the velocities of A, B, and cylinder at the instant when cylinder reached the ground. If that is the question.
That would require radius.
Yes. Then you require like how far the cylinder has to move before hitting the ground. That we should know.
Yes.
Right? If you just want to find accelerations, then you don't need to know radius.
Yes.
Or even for this question also, radius is not required.
Sir?
Yes?
Sir, initially you told that ratio of accelerations of A and B should be the ratio of velocities also of A and B, no, sir?
Yeah, that was because, see, the reason for me to tell that is, both the bodies, both the prisms, they start moving from rest. Okay. So displacement of A or velocity of A, I can write as acceleration of A into P. And velocity of B, I can write as acceleration of B because they are starting from rest. Right? Now time will be same for both. Right? So if accelerations of A and B are having some ratio, then velocities also should have same ratio.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Right? That was the reason for saying that.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Okay, right? So like with this, like I will end the session here. Right?
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
The next session.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah, ask me.
Sir, like I asked this question once before also, when I asked you if magnetic field is varying within a plastic rod ring, with a plastic ring, suppose.
Plastic magnetic field is varying within a plastic ring.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think a few days back, I think
Yes,
you were
sir.
asking like, regarding induced EMF. I think induced EMF.
Yes, sir. So you told induced EMF will not be induced, no, sir.
Yeah, we won't define induced EMF there. We will define like induced electric field.
Sir, but then what about Faraday's law, sir?
So Faraday's law tells you that this whenever there is a time varying magnetic field, then you can say integral of E dot dl is equal to minus d phi by dt.
Oh.
What is integral of E dot d? We consider integral of E dot dl as it in a conductor, right? But integral of E dot dl also stands for integral of induced electric field over a closed loop.
Okay.
Okay, that is what we actually, that's a mathematical form of Faraday's law. Integral of E dot dl is equal to minus d phi b by d.
So here EMF is not there, sir.
See, EMF is a term we generally use for like conducting like loops or conducting ring, where like if you want you can call it as an EMF, but it's no point in actually calling it as EMF because it's not doing anything.
And so here this EMF is defined in space, no, sir, not in the conductor, no, sir.
Field is defined in space.
Sir, but if you're taking field integral, then it is defined in space only, no, sir, because for different conductors it is not different, no, sir.
Yes. A field integral, you can define field integral for any point in space. Okay, But what you get as a result of calculating the field integral, that will give you the induced EMF in a conducting loop.
Okay.
Okay, if you have a conducting loop in place where you are calculating the field integral, that gives you the EMF over the conducting loop.
Okay.
But if you take a non-conducting loop, even if you're considering a non-conducting loop like a plastic loop, okay, you can still go on and define EMF and say that like integral of E dot dl is EMF. Right? But that EMF is not going to produce any current.
Okay.
Because
So actually, in one question, they told a fiber loop is there and magnetic field is varying. And they asked, one option was there, EMF is induced, but there is no current.
Yeah, that's correct. EMF is induced if it is a non-conductor. If it is a perfect non-conductor, then there cannot be a current.
Yes.
Even if EMF is induced.
So, but can we say EMF is induced?
It's not wrong. Theoretically, it's not wrong to say that EMF is induced, but generally we don't use the term EMF for non-conducting materials. We although can define field everywhere.
Okay.
Sir, like instead of using the word EMF, can we say potential difference, sir, in this case?
Potential difference, like in space, suppose if you consider vacuum, there's a region like vacuum, okay, or air, right? In vacuum, whenever you vary magnetic field, there will be induced electric field. But can you define potential difference between 2 points in vacuum because of induced electric field? You can't, because induced electric field is a non-conductor. Okay. If there is a static electric field, if there is an electric field produced by static charges, then you can always define potential difference. Okay. So in a non-conductor also, say if you're taking a non-conductor like some plastic material, or you take any other non-conducting material like glass or something. Okay. So there, when an induced electric field is developed, the induced electric field is non-conservative by nature. But because of induced electric field, some induced charges may develop. Although induced charges are not going to be so strong as what you get in conductors, but some induced charges due to polarization may develop. Those charges, they will produce a field, and for that field you can define potential.
Okay, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.